So we are in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8 this morning. And if you notice on your bulletin, I put Philippians 4:13 on here because I thought that we were going to finish with Philippians today and we were going to get through this, but it turns out that I was wrong. But I was wrong after I got the bulletins done. So we're not actually going to get to this scripture today. It's a really good one. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's Philippians 4:13. And I thought that we were going to get there this morning, but we're actually just going to stick with Philippians 4:8 and 9 this morning because that's what we got to. After we were done working on the wall, if you see me drinking water a lot, it's because I have chalk dust in my throat from doing all that work. But after we were done working on that yesterday and setting the room up for youth this morning, I went into my office and prepared the message for today, and then I went home. And then when I was at home, God told me what I was speaking on today. And I went and retyped my message and had all different stuff. So that's good. That's good when God is faithful to say what he wants to talk about, right? Okay. We're going to start in Philippians 4, verse 8. And it says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you." Amen? So I'm going to say that all that list of really good stuff that he listed, that's going to be the good stuff this morning, okay? So when I say good stuff, I'm talking about all of that stuff he's talking about. I'm talking about the noble, the right, the pure, the lovely, the admirable, the excellent, the praiseworthy things. And so when you hear me talk about the good stuff, that's the good stuff. Everything else is the bad stuff, okay? The stuff in the world that's around us, the stuff in the darkness, the stuff that weighs us down, that's the bad stuff this morning, just for frame of reference, okay? So when you read this scripture, it just, at first, just seems like a really encouraging word to have happy thoughts. That's kind of when I read through it fast, that's what I take away from it. But I think there's more going on here for us this morning than that. I think it's good to recognize, and it changes the context of the scripture when you realize that this letter was written by a man in prison to a people who are being persecuted. And so neither on the beginning of the letter or the end of it are there really an abundant availability of good things going on, good circumstances going on. And so this concept is not bound by circumstance. This isn't a circumstantially bound concept to focus on whatever is pure, whatever is excellent, whatever is lovely. This isn't dependent on our circumstances or on what we're going through or on the situations that are happening in our lives, because it's written by someone who we would say, okay, he's in prison. That's not a great circumstance. Written to people who are actually being persecuted for their faith. Also not a good circumstance. And so there's something that he's communicating here in this. And when it says to focus on the lovely things and the excellent things and the pure things, what's not written but implied here is that we're not living our life focusing on the negative things. We're not living our life focusing on the dark things of the world and the heavy things that can weigh us down and the bad things. So the implication when he says focus on the good stuff, the implication is that we're not supposed to be living our lives with our eyes and our mind focused on the bad stuff. So there is right now a war that is being waged for your attention and the focus in your mind and how you think and what you focus on and where your attention is dwelling. As a matter of fact, there's a purposeful war being waged for your attention, isn't there? I mean, we've all grew up in sort of the ad generation where everybody wants to grab your attention, everybody wants to grab your focus, and everybody wants to sell you their product. And anymore, the advertisement has very little to do with the product, doesn't it? We watched this one on the Super Bowl. Some of you may have seen it. It was this long commercial about this chapel in the middle of the country, and it is this church, and it's all about unity and drawing together and healing relationships, and it was a Jeep commercial. What does Jeep have to do with going to church and healing relationships and having unity? You can get this particular church into Jeep, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, they take something that is something that we're hungry for, that's something that we want, and then they sell their product with it. So there's a war being waged, and it's raging for our attention, for our focus, for the things that we're going to zero in on in our life. I don't think these verses are saying that we should be unaware of the dark things in the world. I don't think they're saying that we shouldn't know that those things are going on. But between the good, the pure, the praiseworthy, the excellent things, and the dark and the weighty and the negative things in this world, which one of those things has captured our mind? Which one of those things has captured our focus? There's a big difference between being the light and shining in the darkness, as we're called to do, right? It says we shine like stars in this dark world. So there's a big difference between being the light and shining in the darkness and being the light and carrying a backpack full of that darkness around with us. What is inside of you? This is more than just a concept or an idea. I've met many brothers and sisters in the Lord throughout my walk who have become so focused on the negative things that are against Christ and focused on battling the worldly things, that their mindset has become more about what they're battling and less about the really good stuff that's in Jesus. It's become more about those things that they're concerned about because they don't line up with Jesus. And there's plenty of those things, right? But their fight against this takes up more of their mind space than all the really good stuff that Jesus is already doing in our lives. So how do we live a life shining in the darkness, but focused on the good in our lives instead of the bad? It's a lot harder than it sounds. The war is being waged actively to draw your attention away from the stuff that we should be focusing on. The thing is this, is that the devil doesn't have to beat you to win. He just has to distract you. He doesn't have to overcome you to win. He just needs to do enough in your life to draw your attention away from the things that you should be focused on. If we're supposed to be focusing on the good and the pure and the excellent and the praiseworthy, and that's what's supposed to be filling our lives so that it shines out from us wherever that we go, the devil doesn't have to beat you. He just has to distract you and have you take your eyes off of Jesus. One way he can do this is simply by making you mad at him. It's not the things in our life that aren't justifiably upsetting. It's some of those things that are completely justifiably, like where this should make you mad, are sometimes the most distracting things. All he has to do is make you mad enough at him that you're not focused on Jesus anymore, that you're not focused on the good and the pure and the excellent. There's a something that has been tickling the back of my brain, and I'm having a hard time articulating, but I'm going to walk this out this morning, and it's this. There's a certain amount of trust involved with having this sort of mindset. There's a vulnerability involved with having this sort of mindset. And what I mean by that is that some of those things in our life that we're upset by are legitimate things. And so there's this feeling that if I don't focus on that, if I don't take care of this problem, then who's going to? And so there's a really sweet kind of trust that's involved with letting go of that and letting Jesus take care of it. Because some of the things we're talking about are things that are closest to our hearts. When we're talking about keeping our eyes on Jesus, and we're talking about living a lifestyle where we're focused on the good and the excellent and the praiseworthy, sometimes it's the things we love the most that can pull us away from that focus. Because it takes a trust. And it takes a vulnerability to say, Lord, this is really important to me, but I'm going to trust you with that, and I'm making a choice to focus on the good things. I'm making a choice to focus on the good things. So the devil can weigh you down with heavy, dark things. He can effectively take your eyes off the things that you're supposed to be focusing on. And unfortunately, it's not hard for him to do sometimes because we're literally lining up to bring negative things into our lives. We're lining up to just suck in his propaganda and take negative things into our lives. When we watch our news shows, when we're surfing the internet on Facebook and we're sucking in all these negative stories that are out there right now about bad politics and the negative things that are happening, and we're digesting this stuff and we're bringing it in, and how many times, how much of the news right now is positive stuff? None of it. It seems like they used to throw a positive, touching story in there every once in a while. But all of it's negative, weighty, drawing you down type of things. So we're signing up for this stuff. When it comes to whether or not we're going to focus on the good and the praiseworthy and the excellent things, or we're going to focus on the negative things, it's easy to look at the scripture and go, yeah, I should focus on the positive things. What things are we seeking out? What are our actions communicating about the things that we want to be focusing on? A lot of the bad stuff that we focus on, we can't do anything about. We can't do anything about it. People tell you that it's very important for you to stay informed. Okay? You guys heard that? Like, it's very important to stay informed. But I'm going to tell you this morning that there should be a limit on how informed you are. There should be a limit on how informed you are. And that limit is different for everybody. But if you're so well informed that it's destroying your peace, then you should take a long, hard look at all of the things that you've brought into your life, all of the information that you've gathered. And if you can't do anything about it, toss it out. If you become so well informed that you're angry and you're upset and you're worried, they're too well informed. That's not what we should be focusing on. I want to give you 2 examples this morning. Someone I love a long time ago, a couple years ago, came up to me and he was very distraught and very worried, and he had read this news article about this group of people that were out to destroy Christianity. Okay, those groups aren't hard to find. But this news article was they're lobbying and they're doing this and they want to do this to the church or that to the church. I don't even remember the specifics because there's so much of that out there that it's hard to keep it all straight. But he was upset about it and he was worried about it, and it was consuming his focus. So I advised him to think locally. And what I mean by that is if I go on the internet, I can find somebody that hates me. Like you can go on the internet and find groups of people that hate Christians, right? Okay. That's not hard to do. You can find people that hate anything. You can find people on the internet that hate Mother Teresa, I'm sure. Okay? But so there's this group of people that hate you, but this week, as you're going about your life in person, how many people did you run across that hate you because you're a Christian? None. Last 20 years of being a Christian, I haven't had anybody hate me for being a Christian except for maybe when I was being a little bit obnoxious about it. But if I was just loving on them like Jesus does, I haven't had anybody come against me. And I don't mean on Facebook. That doesn't count. Because there's so much hate on Facebook, it's plenty to go around. But in person, this week, how many people have you run across that hate you because you're a Christian? You don't run into that in your community. Sometimes you do, but not to the degree that if you're actively trying to import hatred into your life from all over the world. Because we can go in and import problems a lot, can't we? But if you think locally, what is God doing in my community? What is happening here in my life? Am I being attacked? No. So what's happening is if we open, and there are attacks against Christians going on. I don't want to minimize that. But in our life, are we opening ourselves to attack and to burdens and to mindsets by opening ourselves up to the World Wide Web? Are we importing these problems? No. No, and that's the thing is and we'll get to that too, because there's a balance and it's different for everybody. The second example is political radio talk shows. That's a good example because here's the thing about political radio talk shows. They don't have a job unless you're angry. They don't. The political radio talk show guy that gets on the radio and comes on and for a few weeks in a row he says, I have nothing to complain about. Everything's good. That guy doesn't have a job. So unless he can go out there and stir up the masses to be angry about something, he doesn't have work. So I can't listen to a guy who doesn't have a job unless I'm angry. I can't do it. So and this is the thing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to your favorite news program. I'm saying that if you come away from that favorite news program and you're angry and you're distraught and you're worried and your mindset is consumed by negative things, then it's not healthy for you. We're called to live lives rejoicing, full of peace, full of joy, full of gentleness, and at peace. And if we're importing news into our life that destroys our peace, and it's stuff that we can't even do anything about, how is that benefiting us? It's not a matter of not being informed, but we have to be able to be informed, be in the world, but still shine the light of Jesus. Okay, so it's not a matter of content, but it's a matter of capacity. Picture your heads as a bucket. Okay? Your head space is a bucket and you're holding it in your hands. Right? And that bucket is supposed to be filled with the lovely, the excellent, the pure. It's supposed to be rejoicing. It's supposed to be gentle. It's supposed to be full of all the good stuff of Jesus. It's supposed to be filling this bucket. So you live in a world where you're literally surrounded by evil. You're literally everywhere that's around you, the whole world is darkness. And there are things out there that are legitimately upsetting things. There are things out there that are legitimately upsetting. When you start talking about kids being abused, you start talking about the human trafficking and slavery and people being sold into sex trade, those are legitimately upsetting things. And so I'm not saying that those aren't good reasons to get upset. I'm saying that if you start carrying that anger around with you, it starts to fill your bucket and it pushes out the peace and it pushes out the joy and it pushes out the light and it pushes out the gentleness and it pushes out the praiseworthy focused things. And you become a person who is consumed in your mind and consumed in your focus about things that are not Jesus. The trick, and I'll share with you that there was a season in my life where I saw all this stuff. I was working night shift and I would be driving and I would see lines of 14 or 15-year-old young ladies in college who were all trying to hold each other up on their way back to their dorm room. I saw hookers and young people going bar to bar at night. I saw really the dark side of what happens at nighttime. And it's bad stuff. And so I dealt with a lot of depression. I dealt with of not being able to wrestle with that stuff. And so it got to the point where I just said, and I felt like if I prayed for joy, if God gave it to me, it would be a lie. Because how can you be joyful when there's so many people hurting? So I came to a point, and I remember it vividly driving to work, came to a point where I didn't want to do that anymore. I said, Lord, I can't carry this. I want you to give me joy. I want you to give me joy. And I remember I had one of the best nights of my life, just full of joy, all night long. But there's this weird thing that happens. The peace that surpasses understanding is really strange. Because I didn't lose my burden for people. I didn't lose my burden for people. As a matter of fact, about a week later, I was on my way to work and I had been walking in this joy and I felt troubled in a different way. And I was trying to figure out what it was. And when the Holy Spirit's doing something like that, your first response is, what did I do wrong? Like, what's going on with me? And I finally prayed about, Lord, what is this about? And he put somebody on my heart to pray for. And so I prayed for that person. And I was driving around town in my truck, and I listened to worship music, and I prayed for people. And this went on for a few hours. And I was wrung out. And there was this feeling that God's weeping for these people. That God's heart is broken for these people. And so that night I got to partner with him in the brokenness. But there's a difference between us seeing the world and seeing all the bad stuff that's going on around us and trying to carry that and trying to fight against that, and us partnering with God in the fight. Partnering with him, because his burden is light, isn't it? And so there's a joy that you can have even though you have a burden too. The best good that we can do in this world is not by crusading against all of the bad stuff that's going on, but that we would be empty of everything else so that we can carry around the goodness that is Jesus Christ in our life. So that in the midst of the trouble, we can be full of joy, full of peace, full of gentleness, kindness, and we can be focused on all this good stuff. And that looks weird. And people notice that. I think that the scriptures we read before about our gentleness being evident to all, I think one of the reasons it's evident is because it's so strange in some situations. It's weird for us to be gentle in some situations. And that's a peculiarity that comes from having the Holy Spirit in our life. Jesus doesn't look like other people. And when we're carrying that peace around with us, that's weird, because people look at us and go, how can you be so peaceful? How can you be so gentle? How can you be so rejoicing when this is going on? And it's that peculiarity that's going to draw people to Christ. If we're angry about all the bad stuff that's going on in the world, we look like the world, just a different flavor. Because everybody is used to fighting for their side. And they're used to you fighting for your side, even if it's not the same side. So it goes on to instruct them, whatever you have learned from me or seen in me, put that into practice. So we have this instruction that we focus on the noble and the right and the pure and the lovely and the admirable and the excellent and the praiseworthy things. And then also we put into practice the things that we're seeing in the Word and the things that we're hearing from our spiritual leaders that God's placed in our life to teach us. And we press in to those things. And I want to tell you that one of the most exciting things in my life right now is watching the growth that our church has taken over the last year. When I've talked to a pastor friend recently, and he was sharing that in his church, he was talking about some situations, and he goes, this person is complaining about wearing a mask, and this person's complaining about this. And when I was listening to him, the complaints he's talking about are some of the same complaints that I was hearing like a year ago. But we grew past that stuff because we're in this refiner's fire, and God is refining us, and we're growing through the trials. And so here is a tragedy, that we could go through a shaking up and a trial and a hardship as a church and be just the same coming out of it as we were going into it. That we not learn anything from growing in the faith and growing in trust and watching God move in our lives. My prayer going into this whole season that we're in, when everybody was complaining about masks and when do I have to wear a mask and why do I have to wear a mask and why are you even wearing masks? That's just a conspiracy from the government to put you down. All that stuff that I was listening to, my prayer was, God, let there be things going on in this place that are so good, that our community isn't worried about masks anymore. That's not even on our radar anymore. Let the things that are happening in this place be so awesome, and your movement and your spirit and your presence in this place be so awesome that when somebody complains about masks, they go, man, that's not what I'm doing right now. I just want to go to church. I just want to be a part of what God is doing right now. And I've seen that happen. I've seen the growth and the people's mindsets and the things that they're wrestling with change and evolve into more mature things. And that's such an awesome thing to see. And it takes trouble to have that happen. Do you guys know that a classroom full of driver ed people in California, where they sit in a big classroom and learn how to drive in snow? That's different than taking that whole same class and putting them in the snow, isn't it? And that's what happens in the church. We've been a nation and church that's so blessed that we're sitting in a classroom learning what our faith looks like in adversity. But until we go through adversity, we don't know how mature we are. And so this shaking has been such a blessing for us in some ways. And it's been hard and difficult in other ways. But part of this looking at the pure and the good things is we can take a look at this whole experience that we've gone through. And we can say, in this experience, there's been some hard, difficult things. But I'm going to choose to look at all this good stuff that's happened because of the shaking that's going on in our life. I'm going to choose to look at the growth that we've had. I'm going to choose to look at how we have grown in faith as a community where these things don't bump us around anymore. That's precious stuff. I'm so far off my notes right now. I'm trying to find a good place to jump back in here. So it says that if we do these two things, if we look at the good stuff and if we press in to the learning and the growth and doing what we see in our spiritual leaders. Hold on 1 second. See if I can fix this once and for all. Don't worry, I'm going to edit this out of the video, so. Yeah. Wouldn't want people on the internet thinking we're real people. That'd be terrible. Hey, Tony, come here for a second. Make this work. Things driving me crazy. It just, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Okay, cut. Okay. Okay, so if we do those two things, if we press into the good stuff, if we focus on what is good, if we focus on what is pure, if we focus on the lovely things, and we press into the lessons that God is teaching us through the Word, through our spiritual leaders that He's placed in our life, if we look at the people who are more mature than us and do what they're doing, then there's this promise we have that is really cool. It says the God of peace will be with us. This is a gift that's tremendously valuable. I want you all of you guys to close your eyes for a moment. We're gonna picture something for me. Close your eyes and picture a version of yourself. And you're standing there, and in this picture that we're picturing, tornadoes represent hardship and circumstances and situations. And you got tornadoes are all over the place, and they're happening. And picture yourself as someone who's really good at trying to avoid and run away from these tornadoes and get away from the troubles and circumstances. But when a tornado hits you, you're blown about. And your emotions and your mindsets and your heart is blown about by this wind. And it's all over the place. And you're completely vulnerable and subject to this tornado that's happening in your life. And then picture yourself instead as someone that when a tornado hits you, when a storm comes, that you're rooted in place with the peace of God surrounding you and God standing with you in the circumstance and growing you through these troubles. Okay, now look at me. Which one of those is more valuable? That's easy, right? We can spend our life running away from problems and trying to get around them. And then when they hit us, being so focused on the wind and on the tornado and the things that are happening and the things we're talking about and the things that are coming out of our mouth and the things that are consuming our mindset are all the bad stuff that's going on in our life. And we can come out the other side of that tornado exactly the same, except for a little bit beaten up as we went into it. Or we can go into a tornado. We can focus on the good stuff that God is already doing in our life and who He already is in us. We can press into the refiner's fire and say, Lord, shape me. Blow away the stuff that I don't need anymore, but keep the stuff that I do. I want to focus on you. I want to be yours. I want to see your face. And come out of the other side of that tornado, that storm that's in our life. Stronger, more trusting, more full of faith, and more rooted in Jesus Christ. Amen? We live in a world with a lot of storms. There's plenty to pick from out there, and I don't know what storm you're dealing with right now, but I can help you figure out which one it is, okay? So if we read this, if you line up in front of you guys ever watch Sesame Street as a kid? Do you remember that song, one of these things is not like the other? Okay. So if you line these things up in your life, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if it's excellent or praiseworthy, and you line those all up, and then you put the other stuff you're carrying alongside them, the thing that doesn't fit that category that you're carrying around in your backpack, and it's different for everybody here, but that thing that you're holding that doesn't look like the other things, that's the thing you guys get to set down. It's okay to be aware of it. It's okay to pray about it. Somebody after the first service came to me and they shared with me what they were carrying around in their backpack. And it was hard stuff, and it had to do with family. And so they're not going to forget about that stuff. And they still get to pray, and they still get to intercede, and they still get to stand in the gap and pour their hearts out for the Lord. But there's an opportunity here to not carry it around with you when you leave His presence, not because it's not important, but because you're learning to trust Him. He's got it. I want to encourage you guys not to wrestle with the storm, not to be so focused on the thing that's happening that bothers you, but instead focus on the good stuff and let the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Amen? Amen. Father, we just thank you for this time together. We thank you for being an awesome God. We thank you that you are trustworthy, Lord, that you have proven yourself in our life to be trustworthy, to hold on to those things that are important to us. Lord, and help us let go of the things that we're not supposed to be carrying around. And I pray too, Lord, that we would come to a place in our walks where you could trust each of us to come alongside us and share your broken heart sometimes too. That we would pray with you and intercede with you, Lord, but we would not try to carry that burden ourselves. Thank you for being a God of peace, and thank you for standing with us. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen? Amen. Love you guys.